Never judge a book by its cover. That's what they say. This is exactly what I did to Food of the Gods, the search for the original tree of knowledge. In my defense, a little has to do with where I found it, which was in a little bit on the paganism and religions section in my local library. So I thought that combined this with the title, it was going to be a different book. It's still a very fascinating book, don't get me wrong. It's just not what I expected. The subtitle, A Radical History of Plants, Drugs, and Human Evolution, should have been the title of the book. Or at least the subtitle, maybe Food of the Gods, A Radical History of Plants, Drugs, and Human Evolution. Because even though it might have started as the search for the original tree of knowledge, it starts wondering, this book, and going more into a history of drug and psychedelic evolution and how humanity has evolved with its use, and also the use of other drugs like coffee, alcohol, and even opiates. This author is trying to express is question of, is it possible that humanity owes consciousness and evolution to mushrooms, and specifically to psychedelics. Set the stage by talking about shamanism and the use of plant medicine, the magic in food, the search for the original tree of knowledge. The book shares a mixture of storytelling, academic hypothesis, and thoughts from the author. It goes by sharing some of his own experiences in life, by going to the Amazons and so on. It shares how not all shamans use intoxication with plants so they can obtain an ecstasy, but mentioning that all shamanic practices aim to having this rise in ecstasy by using drumming, breath work, fasting, illusions, and of course also using plant medicine. Then the author actually begins with the actual thesis of this book, where he proposes that psilocybin mushrooms were the original tree of knowledge, and he starts linking the humanity's evolution with the consumptions of these mushrooms, and he's suggesting that they sparked, or they were the fire that ignited the rapid expansion of consciousness, and even what led to by language developing, and so we could start using communication, and again aiding in our evolution, and of course also into sharing knowledge, because without language sharing knowledge, it was more of a show and tell. He argues that plant medicine, specifically mushrooms, not only teaches but also heals humanity. And of course, there has been multiple studies saying how hallucinogenics, and specifically DMT and other similar substances, have helped many people overcome PTSD and so on. So I guess he's not too far away from a possibility that this is so. He also outlines how humans have evolved, and in his mind he sees that there is a symbiosis between the psychedelic plants, not only mushrooms, but all kinds of psychedelics that have been used in shamanism and being part of old cultures. And he's pretty much saying that we have evolved because of the use of psychedelics and not in spite of them. He mentions how the psychedelics have appeared in many cultures and throughout the world, throughout the globe. And he believes that the mushroom was the very first one, and that's why his hypothesis of this mushroom being the original tree of knowledge. He keeps on going by talking about how the evolution of humanity being so dependent on many drugs that have even become addictive, and how civilization started replacing these drugs with alcohol, with coffee, with tea. He even has a chapter dedicated to alcohol and the cultural impact that has had throughout many years, how alcohol can sometimes promote aggression, and his idea of why is this liquid, why is this legal, contrasting to psychedelics that they in his mind tend to be non-aggressive, or at least less aggressive. He started talking a lot about politics and communal values, and again just going through the evolution of humanity and all the drugs that were and are being used in the present still, and goes into more details into drugs that have been turned bad by society, by the new moral, by making them illegal, and how even some religious drugs are illegal unless you are part of a specific culture, religion, or specific origin. He then returns to his metaphor and his thesis that since the psychedelic path is what made us evolve, he argues that going back might be our best way to connect back to nature and to a more spiritual and mythic life. The strength of this book is that I really like the weaving of the storytelling, of having this academic writings in a way that is mixed, so it's not it makes it a little bit easier to read. It expresses a very good theory that I think he argues very well, even though he starts just going to a tangent of all the other drug uses and evolution of other drugs, while the title has been of the search for the tree of knowledge. So, and in my opinion, he did not stay in one topic, but at the same time, what he was trying to do is to make the reader share his thought that psychedelics might be the way of becoming one with nature again, and for that he needed to touch in other drugs and other substances and the abuse and the addiction that comes with them. At the beginning especially is has a very cohesive narrative. It's only after the middle of the book that, again, because he wants to bring that thought through, is that he then starts going more into the history of the use of opioids and how they evolve into things that were prescribed by doctors, and then after it became a problem, and even though it's very interesting, it goes away from the central point of the search for the tree of knowledge, which the title makes you suggest will be the main topic of the book. The weaknesses is that he's obviously is dealing with speculation. There is no way to know if mushrooms and psychedelics have indeed have caused our evolution development. And even if you think that, of course, they have played a part, there would need a lot more testing to know for sure how big a part they have played. He's relying heavily on anecdote and personal belief. So, Food of the Gods is a nice book, but it's not a perfect book. Either with you agree with McKenna or not, is still very interesting to see someone go into the search for the mythical Food of the Gods, for the mythical tree of knowledge. And it is very interesting to think that the psychedelics could have had such a deep impact in our evolution. That being said, is just not what the title of the book and what the cover would have made me thought this was about, and it even made me think that it could be part of my occult library. But although a very interesting read, it just is a lot of theses, hypotheses, speculation, and share of his personal beliefs that may, if you are into occult, this may not be the book to read. If you are interested in reading people's interest, people's way of thinking, and the way he explains how he got into the conclusion or the thesis that the mushrooms could very well be, as he claimed, the food that brought knowledge and that made us evolve, then it makes it for a very nice one and that you may like. If by any chance you found this review helpful, please don't forget to like this video and also subscribe and share it with someone that may also be interested into culture and consciousness.